so excited to have this guest today on the podcast. He's a journalist. He is a producer of 2 feature-length films, Hoaxed and Blood Money. He's the author of Guerrilla Mindset, How to Control Your Thoughts and Emotions and Live Life on Your Terms. He also has a mindset masterclass right now, among so many other things. Mike Cernovich, thank you so much. This is really great to get you on. I've been trying to get you on for a couple weeks, but things have been so crazy. There's just been so much insanity going on in the news. I'm so excited to just hear your take on everything in general, but I guess specifically what Trump just said today. Today's Monday. This will probably come out Thursday. I'm sure a lot will change between now and then, but what's your take on all this?
Everything is definitely moving quickly. That's for sure. We went from lockdown. If you go out, you hate grandma, you're literally killing grandmas, you're literally the most evil person in the world, to how dare Trump try to shut down these protests, which are actually riots. And I love to see it. That's the kind of stuff that drives I laugh when I was less cynical. That's the kind of stuff that would drive me crazy. If you're just watching, you're thinking you're just lying to me, you're gaslighting me, literally. But now I enjoy the show. I just laugh about it mostly.
You just kind of laugh about it. I'm starting to feel like, I'm not a racist person. I of course have, so many Black friends and comics and people that I'm always trying to book and promote, and I'm starting to feel like just amongst my friends, like I'm starting to get this feeling, and maybe this is because I'm kind of a people pleaser, but like if I'm not constantly posting something like Black Lives Matter on my social media, then that means I'm racist. Like it's now that it's not enough to just be not racist. You have to be vocally anti-racist, and it has to fit like this very specific definition. I'm not going to say to what most people think, but it seems like a lot of sort of typical lefties have this very sort of specific definition of what it means to be not a racist. And now it's like, it's got to take over your entire social media feed and everything you do, even if you have another business or another podcast.
Well, and brands, for example, Sony and Nike, I guess I can kind of get because they're in the social justice racket, but what does Sony or Zenith have to say about quote unquote social justice? But yeah, that's where the militancy went. It took us away from, it's not enough to just be a good person. You have to actively agitate and use your privilege to be anti-racist and to fight racism every day, even though like a lot of the things you're fighting, because you have to fight, so a lot of things you're fighting are like fake. You're like, okay, that's not actually a racial thing right there, but no, that's really racist. And you're like, no, it isn't. And they're like, oh, so you're siding with racists. And that's where the country's gone. It's militant. I'm 42, and I remember in college that was a lot of critical race theory, postmodern theory was kind of laughed at, really. Nobody realized 20 years from now that was going to become the predominant orthodoxy of every generation, where it's gotten to the point now where, like, I saw a viral video, and a bunch of like white people are kneeling and begging a group of Black people for forgiveness, and then the Black people kneeled too. Yeah, so I mean, it was kind of a Christian church moment, but it was a little cringy. It was a little cringy where they're saying we're apologizing for systemic racism, and it's like, hey, how about we just tell the rioters to quit burning Black businesses, right? How about you shop at a Black-owned? There's like 1,000 ways that you can promote things. How about you go out of your way to, like, one of my favorite things I like to do is you'll see these woke people on Twitter, white people, oh, I'm so woke, and like scroll their timeline. How many women have they retweeted? How many Black people they retweeted? Sometimes you'll have to go down for like days, but they're the first ones. Oh yeah, I'm fighting racism and blah blah blah. Well, how about you like retweet somebody, right? That would do more to build up communities and culture than anything else. But none of it matters. It's all performative. It's all religion.
It does seem like a lot of grandstanding, a lot of like virtue signaling, and a lot of like identity politics. And it's hard. It's like, and I feel like there's a lot of misinformation out there. Like I myself have like over the quarantine, like gotten to looking at a lot of conspiracy theory videos, like rabbit hole after rabbit hole. Like this is what happens when you give me like nothing but time and nothing but internet. And I've just been, I'm buddies with Sam Tripoli. Like, I don't know if you've heard of him, and like Tommy G, and I listen to all their podcasts, and I start to put things together, and it's so, and I can't imagine how confused most people must be. My feeling is that, so there's Black Lives Matter, and then there's the rioters, which, from what I've seen and put together, it seems to me that they are possibly paid groups of instigators, possibly being paid off by George Soros, to kind of give Black Lives Matter like a shitty name and make them look bad. But then I've also seen online people saying, well, these instigators and the people ruining the reputation of Black Lives Matter, well, these are Trump supporters. These are white supremacists. It's like, it seems so easy for both sides to pin this on the other side, basically.
Right, and neither of those are true. So Soros isn't funding Antifa to make Black Lives Matter look bad. Soros initially had funded Black Lives Matter, but, not what's happening to Black Lives Matter is actually really bad.
Really?
And yeah, because Antifa is tying Black Lives Matter to them. So here's what happened. I know this is out with DNC, 2016, Philadelphia. Antifa was like 8 people. And all of the protesters were like, you 8 people are idiots. You need to stay over there. You're just agitating. So what happens is, and it's essentially, Antifa is almost exclusively white. Antifa it's like this. If you want to like join a street gang and be a criminal, then you go be Antifa because you have a license to just be a criminal. The media will defend you. If you go and beat up people, then media won't report on it. They'll cover it up. The local DA, a lot of times they are elected by far left-wing groups. They'll let you go. Mayor Ted Wheeler of Portland, infamously defended a person who was in Antifa, and then he deleted his tweet after it was found out the guy he was shouting out didn't get murdered. The story was he was murdered by fascists, and it turns out he was with a bunch of criminals doing a drive-by shooting. Wow. So now, so Mayor Ted Wheeler then deletes it and tries to pretend like it doesn't happen, and then I saw your eyes got big because you had never heard that. And that's the whole, because the media doesn't report it. So unless you read my Twitter or a few other people's Twitters, Posobix or Andy Knows or somebody like that, you're like, wait a minute, a mayor of a major city shouted out a criminal and then delete, that can't be true. And it's like, no, you can, but you have to, and that's also too the problem where people end up like down bad rabbit holes, or I call them like bad internet neighborhoods, because if you're like, wait a minute, I never heard about this on the news. So then you're like, now I'll just read things on the internet. And then there's a lot of things on the internet that sound true, but they're just not true. But you can't, but then the media will go to debunk those things. And you're like, wait a minute, you're debunking this thing, but you're also telling me that Antifa is not violent. And I know Antifa is violent. Now you're debunking this other conspiracy theory. And it's created a real mess, actually. It frustrates me a lot of times because a lot of my followers will send me things that are just like batshit crazy. And so I hate the media for that. I'm like, okay, the reason my followers send me this is because the media lies. And then, of course, they have their own conspiracy theories where they claim Boogaloo. It's like, I never even heard the term Boogaloo. They're like, Boogaloo boys infiltrating protests. So it's actually not rioters.
I've never heard of that either.
Let's hope they make it up. That's the whole point. They just lie. So the media will make up a movement that doesn't exist, that isn't real, to try to distract from the real violence Antifa is doing. So then if you're just like an ordinary consumer of news, if you're somebody like you where you're busy, you have a life, you're doing comedy or whatever, you're going home, I want to catch up on the news, there really is no place for you to go.
It's overwhelming.
And by you, I mean all of us. Yeah. Because you either have to trust what you watch on CNN and you know that they're lying, or you have to do all the research yourself, which is just, nobody has 4 to 8 hours a day. It's very hard to just say, okay, I'm going to go to this one website and I'm going to get a pretty good segment of the quote unquote news. Almost impossible.
And I feel like it's so, even to just watch one type of news station is going to get you labeled as like right or left. And like, even I feel like people have, called you far left or like far right or like
Yeah.
alt right. And why do you, it's funny because like, as soon as I got a show on Compound Media, or as soon as I wasn't like voting for Hillary, I was like, yeah, I voted for Jill Stein. She was probably not the best idea, but I was like, I just was not about Hillary. And I lost friends over that. Not like it's anyone's business who I vote for, but like I would lose like friends over that. And people be like, oh, you do a show on Compound Media, you must be all right. And it's like really upsetting that it's how quickly you can be put on one side. If it's like, if you're not with us, you're the enemy, you're a white supremacist. It's like, and I know you've like been called kind of the same. Why do you think people put you in that box?
They do that because they have to find a way to discredit you. So I've gone through the whole gambit where they try, like they'll say men's rights activist. It's like, okay, like you read me, there's nothing men's rightsy about me. And then they'll be like, oh, he's an incel, women don't like him. It's like, I mean, okay, I have 2 daughters, like I have children. I've made, probably
I
have
made
had
them with
some,
my penis.
yeah, I've had some female companionship in my day. Let's just put it that way. And then they're like, oh, well, he's a whatever. And the idea is they just want to discredit you because then people go, oh, you can't read him because he's a blank. And then that makes it possible for them to shut you out and to shut you out of the conversation. So they always try to find some kind of label and stick it to you. And it's less effective than it used to be, but it does have implications. So if you try to, like, for example, if I were going to go like rent the Comedy Store for a venue, somebody at the Comedy Store would be like, you can't have him, he's a blank. And then the owner would be like, oh God, I don't want to deal with this backlash and everything else. So that's where it impacts you.
Yeah, I remember, there's a podcast in New York called Legion of Skanks, and they were going to have Milo Yiannopoulos on, and they, at one point, were having it at this place called, like this place in Long Island City, this like small comedy venue. And then basically like people wrote and they were like, you can't have Milo on your show. And then, I mean, they ultimately had him on at a different venue, but it's really upsetting just because a few people, or even if a lot of people dislike you, that doesn't mean that like your voice has to be, it's so hypocritical to me. It's like, we want to hear everybody, but not like this specific group, because we're just all of a sudden just broad strokes, everything they say and do is wrong.
Well, yeah, I remember that with the Legion of Skanks. That was Lewis's stuff was funny because Lewis is like, I don't even know what I got into. Like, this guy is just like a guy that Dave knows, and we were going to have a talk with him, and I'm not trying to be political or a MAGA guy or whatever. And then they start talking about, like, we're going to fight you. And he's like, you're going to fight me? And then gears started turning where he goes, oh, now I realize why the media is able to frame these people as violent. Because what they do is they're like threatening to fight Lewis. And he's like, okay, let's roll. But they got into a fight. The story would be Lewis, Gas Digital, violence, evil people. And they'll just completely leave out like, no. Like 3 of them came at me. I laid one of them out in self-defense. Like, but they're the ones instigating this stuff. So you could just see the gears turning where he's like, oh, I get how, they call it a PSYOP, psychological operation. Like, I get how the PSYOP works now is they instigate on you, and then you defend yourself, and then
you're the violent one.
Now they got you framed as violent. So that was, I think, an interesting moment in Legion of Skank life.
Yeah, like you're allowed to throw a milkshake or whatever, anything. Like now a rock, right? Now it's like a piece, like a brick at my head. But like if you defend yourself, or if you're a cop, if you try to just do your job, especially, it's just hard. I feel like it's like a really fucking hard time. Like if you can't, like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. I feel like this is quiet. I want to check the levels. I don't know what's going on with my audio. Hold on. I'm just gonna, with the mic. Okay, I'm gonna plug this in right here so try to hear you better. Technical difficulties. Okay, here we go. Okay, can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, it's so much better.
Oh, beautiful.
Oh my God, I should have done that 20 minutes ago. Okay. Um, it's tricky. Why do you think so many people are confused? And here's where I do think there has been some progress, because not so long ago CNN was like the most trusted smarty pants news station, and now we have people trying to burn it down in Atlanta. And it's weird. It's like, well, Trump's been saying all along that CNN is fake news, and they've been like jacking a lot of the chaos up, and they completely overblew the coronavirus, as did so many of the news stations. But it's interesting how like that's the one piece, or like that's the one piece of it that has sort of like spread to the masses, like, oh, okay, CNN is bad. And I wonder like why that is.
Well, they went too far to like the other way. But flip side is people are watching. They leaned into being the bad guys, and they don't care that they're propaganda for terrorism and for terrorists, and they're okay with it as long as the ratings are good. Although the ratings, this shows you too how hard it is to become like an educated American citizen. There's so many like ratings games that, according to some ratings, CNN isn't even in like the top 20 of shows.
Wow.
But I'm like, everybody talks about CNN all the time, so that can't actually be true.
I mean, it's probably like The Masked Singer is number one. And then, yeah, The Bachelor, The Bachelorette.
Right. Well, Fox, they always dominate. So it's weird because Fox does way better on television ratings, but everybody talks about CNN, and MSNBC blows away CNN out too. So even just trying to figure out ratings is complicated, because then CNN will go, oh, we're number one in the core demographic. So everybody's playing their little games and their numbers. So you can't even get the truth about numbers, which are objective, let alone once you veer into anything remotely subjective or that requires any kind of judgment or discretion.
Yeah, and it's so like difficult for the average person to know like what's wrong and what's right. And I was just thinking like, okay, all these people are coming together to protest, like whether peacefully or violently. There's a shit ton of people coming together, like without masks. And I was like, I wonder if in a couple weeks, like they'll start saying that coronaviruses are spiking. Like, how can anybody prove that wrong? Like, well, there were a lot of people together, and then will that justify? Oh, that's the second wave, or will that justify? I don't know, more shutdowns and an increased delay on reopening businesses.
Yeah, and if there aren't massive cases in 3 weeks, a lot of people have some explaining to do. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's like you better hope that. Well, you don't hope people will get sick, but it's really amazing like how quickly like the protesting and riots have like completely upstaged coronavirus. And I don't know, do you think it's a conspiracy that like this was sort of like this is flaring up now as the coronavirus is being taken less and less seriously?
There's always been, because you got to remember we've had protests like this before.
Yeah,
with Dallas, and there was a shooting where somebody killed a bunch of Dallas police officers. Stuff like this, we've been due for things to kind of pop off. People have been locked in. So everybody who maybe was living a normal life is going to watch this George Floyd get killed. And so now you're like enraged, and you're in the house, so you already have all this pent up anger and frustration. And if they're young, you're horny, like people, incels.
it's the horny people.
Yeah, like imagine that you're cooped up, and like you can't go to bars, you can't go anywhere to meet people.
Wow.
Yeah, so you're just home, mad at the world, and now you feel like you're righteous now because someone was murdered, and you can feel that fury, and now you want to join in that, and it pops off all around the country. So yeah, I'm anti-conspiratorial and all that.
Really? Okay. I sometimes wonder, like, if I, should back off on the conspiracy stuff. It's like very addicting,
Bit, yeah.
and it's like, and a lot of times it's like you're just searching for some kind of answer for everything because you don't believe what you're seeing in the mainstream media. So you're like, oh, does this explain it better?
Well, and humans too. Humans have a block psychologically to spontaneity, which is because then we're recognizing things are just out of our control. Sometimes shit just pops off, and there's no central planning. It's completely decentralized. But when we admit that, there's so much randomness in our life, and that's not something we want to be comfortable with. So we're always trying to find patterns. Oh, there's bricks here, for example. For example, there's a bunch of bricks.
There was bricks, yeah, and there was no construction nearby.
They said that, but how do you know it wasn't nearby? Or maybe it was an earlier project that got abandoned.
I
We
mean,
don't
yeah,
know.
it didn't appear to be any construction nearby, but the camera person could have done a full like 360 and like, okay, well, what's behind you? The way that it was positioned, it looked like in a neat little bundle, and there was like no broken sidewalk, no construction. And of course, like for me, I'm like, oh, this is coming from someone who's not white. So it can't be Antifa. Like it can't, I have to believe this, like this looks real.
Yeah. So it's decentralized. It's not there. There's no person in the middle. It's a lot of people on the side. It's the same thing with most kind of violence, where people are driving around now and realizing, oh, we can get violence. We will hand out. There one video where people in a car are trying to give a brick to a black guy, and this black woman's like, "What are you doing? This is terrible." Or even John Jones, a UFC world champion, taking away graffiti from people, because what the kids are doing, the white kids, they are white doing this. They are putting Antifa and then Black Lives Matter next to their logo. But if you're Black Lives Matter, that's really bad optics. You don't want that. So it isn't Black Lives Matter doing the graffiti. It's these bad actors. And the bad actors are just angry, vengeful people who feel justified in what they're doing, and they want to go be thugs.
It's like if they're angry and there's chaos inside them, it's like with just regular people. Like if you have an angry person and there's chaos inside you, you want that all around you. You want to like pass that to as many people as you can. And so, right, like the Antifa sees, okay, there's chaos possibly with this Black Lives Matter movement. There's some anger. There's a lot of upset people. Like, let me get in there because I'm full of sperm and I haven't touched a woman in 3 months.
Right.
It's right. And it's also like, this is the biggest protest ever. Well, multiple protests, because like nobody has to go to work. Everyone is like, super well rested. We're all like sleeping in every day. Like everyone's got lots of time, lots of internet, and they've been cooped up for 3 months. I don't know.
Yeah. They've been cooped up for 3 months, which again has the dual effect of everybody's going to see the fucking video, right? Like everybody saw it. Now you're cooped up, you're mad at the world, and you want to do something, like you want to lash out, and that's what happens. And it's very easy to organize now on social media. They have, local chapters, announcements, and everything. Because I followed this movement pretty closely. I've watched it go from in 2016, where it was almost always peaceful, like 10,000 people literally went to protest at the DNC. 8 people are at Antifa. Now Antifa is a big thing because you can do whatever you want, and the media will let you get away with it, and the police will let you get away with it. So if you're criminally minded, what are you gonna do? You're gonna mask up, go be with Antifa.
And I remember because when I was in college, and even like right after college, I was like young, I was stupid, I was angry. I could definitely see myself getting in with these people. And like, it's just funny that you described it. Like, yeah, this once used to be like, the high school yearbook photo was like the sad little club with 8 people. Like it went from that thing to now it's like anyone who's like angry at anything, like come and throw a rock at a Starbucks. It makes me so annoyed because it's like, who do you think is going to be like fixing all these damages? It's not going to be like the CEO of Starbucks like repainting over the graffiti. It's not going to be like this, the president of AutoZone. Like, I don't know why people would loot an AutoZone. Like, I mean, tires are expensive actually. So I don't know.
It's just, again, general chaos. And that's the point you make about the CEO that I made many times, is you don't see him going to like Raytheon or Boeing and finding the CEO or the board of directors' houses, right? Yeah. It's just class warfare against people in their own social class. That's why I don't take that, we're a socialist or whatever you say. Well, if you were a socialist, you wouldn't go make the life hell of poor people. It would be a class war. But they don't
go to a golf course, fill in all the holes,
Yeah, there's a lot of things that people could do. And it's a joke. It's total joke. But unfortunately, we do have our just dishonest media doing what they're doing best, lying to the people.
And you think they do that because it's the main goal is to just get Trump out of office, you think? Or is it to divide and keep people scared, or is it all of it?
Yeah, they want the media. They get ratings. For them, this is all just amazing, right? For them, this is
It's the
heaven.
new sports, right? Like there's no
Oh, yeah.
sports to watch, so
Yep.
let's watch somebody like get set on fire in front of a Starbucks.
Exactly.
Which is crazy because whether you're rich or poor, everyone loves a frappuccino. So that doesn't make any sense to me.
Exactly. So
Everyone goes to
tonight is going to
Starbucks.
be, tonight is going to be very, very interesting.
I heard that they were going to possibly attack the Roosevelt Field Mall, which was when I grew up in Long Island, that was like my mall. That was like I would go there all the time. So I'm very sad about that. Like I do understand, possibly looting a Sephora because skincare is very expensive, Mike. It's very expensive. It's a fortune. Like it's like $90 for like a bottle of anything skincare related. So but I was just seeing that video of like, it's like mostly guys, right? Well, that's the one video that's out there. Is like the guys running into the Sephora. And I'm thinking, these guys have no clue what color foundation their girlfriend wears. They have no idea how to pick up makeup. They have no idea like what perfume their girlfriend or wife is wearing. And it's like, they're going to just be grabbing it. It's like, and then the looters come out and they have like all the wrong colors. Their girlfriend's going to be like, what the fuck are you doing? I don't know. I was like, these men don't know. They don't pay attention.
No, they don't know. Yeah, they're not doing color policy. And again, it's just mayhem. That's all they're doing. It's just mayhem and carnage, acting out. It's all very human, very gross, but there's no real ideological basis to it.
Because this was like a long time coming because we did have, several of these protests, like even during Obama. And, there was at least 4, really well-known police shootings during the time of Obama, but like people are so quick to like even like people high up people blame it. Well, this is because of Trump, like it's more racially tense now because of Trump. And I think he's not a perfect person and he's like not he's not super polished, but like I think it's so unfair to just put that on him. And I don't know. And then like today, he seemed very daddy like, and he was saying like everybody's got a 7 p.m. curfew, like statewide. Like that's what he just said just a few hours ago. And like if you're an individual state can't like clear people up, like we're gonna get in there. And it sounded a little, but like that's kind of what needs to be done because I think we're going on like what day 6 or 7 of the riots. So
yeah, tonight'll be things are gonna pop off and it's gonna go badly. So again, people listen to this on Thursday. So we'll see if I'm accurate. I'm predicting that tonight things are going to go off and the outcome is going to be different than it had been the nights before. And people are going to realize, okay, these crackdowns are going to happen. This is what you learn fundamentally about like crowd control, mob control. If 10,000 people come after you, can't arrest the 10,000, but you can make an example out of 5 or 10, right? And the national mood, like Trump gave a speech today, and the tone was, of course, the media spun it as some kind of militant thing, which it wasn't. Trump could have got on stage and said, we're going to send in the army, and we're going to treat these people like terrorists, and we're going to treat them like they're Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. Most of America would have been like, thank you, right? He could literally just be this militant dictator. He's not. That's the problem. Well, not the problem in the sense that we want him to be, the problem in the sense of he's like framed as this militant guy, and he's actually not this militant guy. And then he does pretty cautious, measured moves, and then they still try to frame him as a militant guy, which devalues and debases what people think about what a real fascist dictator looks like. It's like, honey, we're not even close. Trump is not it.
Yeah, I think he's more of like closer to like a real dude, like he approached the presidency like a businessman. He just was like, oh, how do we get back the jobs that we've lost like over the past few decades? And he's the first person to point out like China's fucking us, like China's fucking over the whole world right now. Like I was just like watching these videos of like, these restaurants in China or these stores in China just aren't letting anybody in that's black, like crazy racism. And then also like in the African countries, not letting anybody who's Chinese in to do anything. So it's interesting, like for me, when I like step back from the US and I look like, oh, what's going on kind of everywhere. But I don't know, it's like, it's very confusing for the average person. And I think that, yeah, the mainstream media, if they can keep you scared, then that's how you're going to keep checking in. And that's the ratings, right? Because if you're scared, that's a powerful motivator,
Yeah. And it's frustrating because he's just not that. He isn't that. He's not a militant guy, but he could have been. Today, he could have gone full militant and the country be with them. And that's why that's a problem if you're like me and you're more civil libertarian minded, like the mood of the room is not good right now. And the mood of the room can take us to a bad place. So it's incumbent upon these, terrorist groups they need to de-escalate. But if they don't, things are not going to go well for them.
What would it look like if he, like you're saying, if he could have gone way worse, he could have gone way stricter? Like, what would that look like? Would that look like you're going to be shot? Like, what would?
Just people would disappear.
Right? Get into a bag. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Just, you 5 of you go out and one of you just isn't going to come home. Where do you go? Nobody knows. Maybe you're rendition to another country, right? Who knows?
Wow.
Nobody knows. That would, it's gone. That would happen. Well, it would happen in 2 days. So the first night that happened, people would be like, hey, where are people from last night? And then the second day they'd be like, you know what? I don't think I really want to be out. It doesn't feel like
yeah. They just, Joey hasn't texted me back. I'm good. I'll stay home.
Yeah. And I don't advocate that, obviously, but
no,
that's what it really would look like, where the media is like, oh, he's sending in the troops on people. No, he isn't sending the troops on people. Like, we know if you're sending the troops in on people, they're kicking down your door and you're in zip ties. This is not.
He's been pretty measured, and like people were giving him shit. Oh, he hasn't made a statement. It had been like a couple days had gone by. Oh, and they'll give him shit for not being quick enough. And now that he has had a statement, like, I'm sure people will be like, well, he's too harsh. And yeah, I think a lot of people don't know like what harsh would actually look like.
Yeah, they have no conception of what really using the military to do would look like. No clue.
Did you see the Epstein documentary series at all?
No, I haven't. I've been meaning to. I'm gonna watch it soon.
I think I was watching with my boyfriend. What are we on, episode like 4 or something? Oh, we're done. We saw the whole thing. Okay, so I was pretty amazed with how many opportunities they took to put, like, because Trump and Epstein were in the same circles, but like Epstein was also hanging out with a lot of like rich and famous and powerful people. But like they showed pictures of Trump and Epstein like 4 or 5 times. Like it looks like they really made it a point to like show them together. And then on Twitter, I think like yesterday, I saw something come out like where it was like a court case where it was like Epstein and Trump had like jointly raped this girl. And I'm like, if this happened, like, why is this just coming out right now?
Yeah, that was a hoax that trended last night. Yeah, I had a bunch of people, oh, have you seen this thing? And I was like, yeah, it's a debunked lawsuit that was filed as a PR stunt. And then when Trump went to defend himself, it was dismissed. So Lisa Bloom was in on it. It was a total hoax. And yeah, but that's how they do it, is they file the hoax lawsuit. Jane Doe, by the way. So
exactly.
Jane Doe, hoax lawsuit. But then that gets in the public record. And now the rest of your life, you have to be like, no, that's actually hoax. Because I deal with this all the time. People are like, oh my God, I saw this thing you like wrote. And I'm like, I didn't write it. Like, that's a Photoshop. And you're just like, oh God.
Wait, somebody photoshopped, made it look like you wrote something you didn't?
Oh, there's all kinds of stuff. Oh my God. Yeah. Countless. Fake audio, fake video. I mean, you name it. And so that's what they do, is they just put it in circulation. And then people are like, oh, I like Mike and he seems reasonable. And then they like go down a rabbit hole, a Cernovich rabbit hole. And they're like, oh my God, what's this? I'm like, oh my God, I've been explaining this for like 5 years. And so that's what they did with Trump. That's what they do with a lot of people. And that's also why when the media claims, oh, disinformation is a problem, they're never debunking lies about me, right? The media didn't rush last night. Oh, if disinformation is so bad, and they see that trending, where were all the reporters going? No, much as we don't like Trump, we care about the truth. And this is actually not true. This was debunked. This was a hoax. It was a fart. No. But but then if Trump says something today, they'll fact check him to death. So they don't actually care. The media, more so than anyone else, they weaponize disinformation against their adversaries, knowing that it will jam up your life and just make life more difficult.
Right, because I have a lot of friends who are porn stars, and I have a lot of friends who, they talk about some conspiracy theories, or even they're just like kind of edgy comics, and you'll see people get, like, friends of yours get shadow banned, and a lot of censorship on like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And then once I saw like, oh, now they're fact checking Trump's tweets. It's like crazy. It wasn't actually fact checking. It was just like, oh, if you don't fall in line with this like very narrow like leftist agenda, well, it's not even like it's fact. It's just like they don't agree with your opinion. And to say that like, well, we fact check it and it's wrong is
right.
Is like insane. And I wonder if do you think that was a calculated move on Trump's part, like to just see, kind of like retweeting, and like, do you think he was pushing Twitter to sort of come up on him essentially so that he could like give the order of like, okay,
No, he's not as calculating as people imagine. He's a very reactive person. Often though, it looks like he's calculating because he has good instincts. So you're like, oh wow, this thing happened, and because he responded in that way, he must have wanted that thing to have happened. Right. No, that's just not the case at all. But his instincts, especially you're in media, people in media. There's no one in media like Trump. Nobody. We've never seen it in our lifetime. I don't think we'll ever see anybody like it in our lifetime when we're 80 years old or 90 or however long we live. There's just nobody was ever like. He was a cultural icon. In many ways, with the Apprentice, his wealth was kind of exaggerated for TV, but whatever. That doesn't matter. Truth, it's just media. And he was an icon, cover of GQ, every magazine, name dropped in rap songs, like 99% name saturation. You don't get that. You don't get there if you're just not a unique figure. But he's not as, because I know how he thinks, and I know a lot of people who deal with him on a daily basis. He's not this guy planning his next move. And if like a flow chart, he's not being like, okay, or decision tree. Well, if I'm going to do this, and if they do that, then I'm going to do that. But if they do this, then I'll go do that other thing. It's never like that.
And if they do this, I'm going to golf.
Right, exactly. I'm going to golf on Memorial Day.
What do you think is the biggest, like you're talking about misinformation, like what do you think is the biggest sort of like lie or misinformation out there about you?
Two strains of it. The biggest disinformation is how like they tie me to Pizzagate. And it's just like, show me the tweets where I ever said anything about a pizza parlor had X, Y, and Z going on there. It's just, they don't exist. There was a hashtag, and I posted a hashtag, and I talked about like Jimmy Savile, and I talked about Epstein, and I just talked about how like a lot of people were getting away with pedophilia. And I talked about how the media covered it up. This was all pre-Harvey Weinstein. So they weren't, there was still a total media blackout on all the deviancy, the casting couch, Nickelodeon. So I posted a hashtag. So the disinformation is that like Pizzagate was my thing, and that they go, oh, I promulgated it. Like, no, I didn't.
You like came up with it? That's what people think?
Yeah. No, they think that that's my thing that I like created. And it's like, okay, but that's just not true. But the media doesn't debunk it because they don't care about truth. If the media, they could say I was, cruising a hashtag or whatever. There's like things to be said about it. But yeah, that's by far people are like, oh, he's a Pizzagate guy. He created Pizzagate. And then there was that shooting, and he was like responsible for that. It's like, show me the tweets where I said anything about that, right? They can't because they don't exist. So that is by far the most well-known. The most just dumb, and it's a dumb lie too, but in a way, like that lie, as strange as it sounds, doesn't really hurt me. Because with the Jeffrey Epstein stuff and the pedophile stuff, most people outside of that DC media bubble think, oh, so he doesn't like pedophiles, so he's against pedophiles. That's like how it translates. It doesn't. So if you're like in DC and you're very proper, dishonest scumbag media reporter, and you say that, and your 10 friends are like, oh, gasp, terrible. But if you're just like a normal guy, or certainly an American flag waver, and you're like, oh, so he hates pedophiles like Epstein, that's our guy. That's a good guy. So it doesn't really hurt me, actually. It's probably the disinformation on that has probably kept me safe, because people think that somebody went in to shoot up something because of me. It's like, okay, I don't have that kind of power. But if you want to think that I'm so powerful that I could just create these things out of thin air, and then people are like an army waiting for their orders, go right ahead. That it doesn't hurt me for people to think that I have that kind of power.
It's also like, if they really want to, hush it, like, oh, it's just this one guy with this idea, instead of, well, it's probably a lot of people who know about Pizzagate. It's probably a lot of people who've heard about like Comet Ping Pong or pizza or whatever. Wow, that's crazy. Cause I just started really getting into the Pizzagate stuff, like, again, in the last like 2-3 months. And, and it's like, that's insane to blame it on you, because like, I thought that the Pizzagate thing came out of the deleted, like the Podesta emails, like the WikiLeaks, where they're like, oh, we're going to order $65,000 worth of hot dogs to the White House, like that Obama email, or like all the stuff.
That's the whole point. That's the whole point is, whatever people's opinions of it are, they're, like, I didn't objectively promote it, or I didn't objectively create it. I didn't objectively drive it. I posted to a trending hashtag that was massively popular to raise awareness about Jeffrey Epstein and other people. Yeah. But so that's like the truth. But the media doesn't care about the truth. So they're like, so the way they do it now is, and it depends on the publication. So some of them, like the Washington Post, they're dishonest, but they won't just outright make it up. So what they do is they won't say that I created it, because that's just objectively a lie and it's falsifiable. But they'll say he's spread, right? And I mean, if you post to a hashtag and use the hashtag, right? Now, that means if you debunked it, you spread it. Because talking about it's just like if you're sick and you sneeze on somebody accidentally, like, you've spread it. It doesn't matter what your intent was, like, you've spread the idea too. So it's not a fair characterization.
That's not fair at all. That's insane. Like, you're just a person in the media. You're in the media. You're like a journalist. You're allowed to comment on things that already exist. Like, that reminds me of, like, so in March, when like we first did the lockdown, I did a parody. So remember the Gal Gadot thing that came out, and it was like little, Imagine, and it was like everybody saying a line, and I was like, look at these fucking assholes, Yeah. So I got like myself and a bunch of comedian friends, and we sang Kung Fu Fighting, except I was like, you could say Kung Flu if you want, because it was a trending hashtag at the time, Kung Flu Fighting. Like, that's what they were calling the coronavirus. And I was like, yeah, you guys can say that if you want or whatever. So the song ended up coming out, like everybody was Kung Flu fighting, and then it was the same kind of thing. Each of like me and my comedian friends saying a line. It went out. Did it go viral? I don't know. It got like a lot of views, 200,000 or something. Like not too shabby for somebody like myself, But then I have so many fucking dumb people saying that I invented the hashtag Kung Flu fighting, and that those were my lyrics, that I wrote this song that was written in the 70s. That's like was a very popular song. It's like, oh no, like, you're racist because you wrote this song and you came up with this hashtag. And I was like, oh my God, you're so fucking dumb. And it's like, not like what we did was all that clever. We weren't like trying to be racist. We were trying to like make fun of the tone deafness of Gal Gadot and company. And then like about a month later, Instagram removed that video. Like they took it down because they said it was hate speech, and it took them a month to do it. And I was like, fucking hate speech? If that's hate speech, you might as well remove like any rap song ever, like, how is that it made me so angry. But I was like, it took them so long to do it that it was kind of ultimately pointless.
Well, so. and you'll also notice too, because I thought about that when the Milo Legion of Skanks drama happened, is the Legion of Skanks on any day are way more offensive than the most offensive thing Milo has ever said.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But because they're not quote unquote political, they don't get like fact checked and hate speech or whatever. And there's this weird kind of standard where if you're somehow cataloged as political, then you say anything and you're getting smoked. But if you're like, oh, I'm comedy, then you can just be as raucous as you can. So what happened to Milo is Milo was trying to be like a comedy guy. And so he thought, I'm a comedy guy, I could just get away with everything. But in the public perception, he was a political guy. So like there's these rules. The rule is like, if I'm perceived as a journalist, I can't do like a skit that is satirical or goofy or whatever. If I did a skit, that would be called hate speech. But if I were a comedian like Ari Shafor, I remember he did this, it was hilarious. It would get banned for sure, but he dresses up in like a KKK outfit and he does the amazing racist bit.
Oh God.
Oh my God. You'd never see anything like that again.
Ari always has like, that's his thing, right? He'll say like the worst possible thing after like a death or a tragedy. Like he got some serious heat for after Kobe Bryant was killed or whatever. He said like,
right.
Good riddance or something like obviously inappropriate, but that's his style. And I don't feel like he really like got away with that because I don't know. People love to cancel comics that they disagree with. They love to just like call whatever venue you're supposed to perform at and be like, it's never fucking people that were ever going to go to your show anyway. It's never anybody that was going to buy your album. They're not even people who like comedy. They just like to destroy your life because they disagree with you.
Yeah, and now and Ari just had it good because if you were new and you tried to do what he's doing, that would just not go well. Like the Amazing Races was what the bit was called, and the videos I don't know if they're still on YouTube or not, but they were pretty wild. So if you were sort of baptized in fire, like what are you going to do? You can't cancel Ari. He's too ensconced in the comic community. But if you were new and you didn't have those networks and people willing to stand up for you and to tell people calling, just go fuck yourself. Yeah, you do anything edgy, that's the end of it. Like that happened to that SNL guy. I think Shane.
Oh my God, Shane Gillis. Yeah. Oh man, he got fucked. It was so ridiculous. Like I know we're not like close friends, but I know him, and I was like, I was at the stand the night that he like, got the job, and then was in the process of like all the shit was popping off, and people were trying to cancel him, and then I wondered too. And you hear stories like, oh well, SNL just hired him and they knew that this was going on and then they were going to make a big thing out of firing him just to like get more attention to the show. But I wonder if they just didn't really check very thoroughly. But at the same time, like you hire him, what do you expect? Like, his brand.
And the bit that got him, it was just kind of dumb.
It was like kind of a simple
hack.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's sort of like where you're like, oh, you're gay. Like, okay, like, it's not really a joke.
He said like nooders instead of noodles, like a simple, like silly. It was just like a silly thing.
And I'm sure that he regrets it because it was like hack. It's not like this is high art and I'm really going for it. It's just more like,
podcast.
Oh, you're like, gay. Oh yeah, no, you're gay. No, you're gayer than ISIS. Okay, so now you're homophobe. And you're like, oh my God. No, that's just dumb banter.
Yeah.
It's low tier stuff. It's hack stuff, but it isn't homophobic. Like if you call someone gayer than ISIS, you're not like, first of all, it doesn't even make any sense, right? That's the whole point.
It just sounds funny.
It just doesn't. So you're not being homophobic. It's just a thing that like a teenager would be like, oh, you have the cooties. See, just something like that. And, but you get labeled that way and canceled.
So you think if Milo Yiannopoulos like got on stage a couple times a month or had like a couple shows and he could say like, oh, I really am a comedian, you think people would be a little like softer on him?
Well, they wouldn't, but everybody can make a comeback. He was still, even after he got quote unquote canceled, he was still doing wildly popular events, turning out huge crowds, but then the venues would cancel on him. And I think he just got kind of, world weary, fatigued, and, got tired of dealing it. But no, if he just came up and was just like, you can all hate me, I don't care. I think there's some venues who would be like, come on in. And he could move forward, but that was what they did to him. I think was pretty psychologically devastating to him.
What, just like
the same day he lost keynote speaking gig at CPAC, which is a big deal in his world, job at Breitbart, and a book deal.
Oof.
the same day. And it was a big book deal with Simon and Schuster. It was, a lot of money. The book had already been pre-sold and was number one on Amazon. So you already
Oh,
done. No, I mean, it was like,
do those people
no,
at least get their book? Like if they
no,
pre-ordered?
because when Simon Schuster canceled it, all those pre-sales
Not even
vanished,
an audio book?
gone. So then he self-released it and everything else. But just imagine like the same day, other than losing like a person you love in an untimely manner or a kid or something, like he has lost it all in one day.
Just
That's
a
hard to come
huge
back from.
chunk of your career stuff. Ugh. There's something like, I don't know, I don't follow all of his work like super closely, but I've seen him at Compound Media. Like I met him like the one and only time I met him at Compound. He's just like, he's a presence. Like he really fills a room. He is like, he's something else. Like, and I love all gay men just like on site because they're great and they have good fashion advice. And he said like whatever I was wearing was like frumpy, and I was like, oh, you're right. And then I was like, oh, that's my show. It's called The Wet Spot. He's like, oh, that's dreadful. He's like, you're alienating the people that you're trying to bring in. He's like, women will hate that. Men will hate that. You're too sexual. I was like, all right. I was like, I kind of get it.
Well, I was at an event with him in Berkeley, and it was like what it would be to be with a rock star. Led Zeppelin. People were grabbing it. I'd never seen anything like it.
Wow.
Freaked me out. Because like I go out, I'm recognized, I do an event, people like me, but it isn't like people are tearing my clothes. People are like, Milo. Even the reporters were like caught in this like magnetic field.
Wow.
Grabbing at him, like literally like they just want a piece of him. You would read about like in the Bible when the prophets would walk by or something, they would jump and try to just touch your garment or something. I never saw anything like it, and I'm getting like tossed around the scrum.
You're like, does anyone want to grab my shirt?
No, I'm the opposite. I'm like,
No.
Don't touch me. I don't want you to touch me. I don't need to feel that way. And so whatever he has, that charisma, that vibe, I don't know however you want to, he has it.
He's got an electricity. Like, I don't know if he's just like a super attractor. Like he's really, it's confidence mixed with crack. I don't know.
Yeah, it's real. I mean, he had, and he had like most people in the political world, myself included, I have a fair amount of talent, a fair amount of skills. Like I'm not Jay-Z, right? I'm not like a lot of political people.
You're not black. No.
Well, it's not even that. Yeah, blackface. Boy, I'll see that. They'll say that's a racist comment now because I'm appropriating Jay-Z. But like, there's just something about Jay-Z or Kanye that's like superstardom. Kim Kardashian is the exception because she doesn't have this charisma, but she like created it. And that in itself is more, it's interesting in a way. So like people
Have you ever met her?
No comment. People in
Okay.
people in politics though, like they reach a certain level and they're like, oh yeah, I'm actually a real star. And Milo was like a real star. He was whatever those people have, star power, the X factor, the it factor, like he had it. And to some degree, Alex hasn't, Mr. Jones. But Milo is just completely different level. And he had his star clipped and in a bad way.
Do you think that this would, like if he was sort of like coming up, if these things were happening now, do you think the same result would happen to him, or would he have his own space more so?
Well,
I mean, it wasn't that long ago.
No, I mean, but in the internet, it was 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
People forget about, even Ice-T said this in an interview one time. People go, how long would it take for people to forget you? And he said 6 months. He goes, if I didn't do anything for 6 months. And you're like, that's Ice-T. And of course, that's an exaggeration, but yeah, people move on to sort of the next thing. But yeah, if he were coming up now, first of all, he wouldn't be a thing because you can't say the kind of provocative things in 2020 that you could say in 2015, 2016.
Wow.
You just can't. You will not. You'll get smoked from the internet like so quick, and that's just that. But in 2015, if you were provocative and ready to be shocking and say transgressive and offensive things, social media companies would let you do that. And then there was a demand for it because mainstream people wouldn't do it. And then you could accelerate. So he wouldn't even be able to be creative. If he came back, and he has a show, so I don't want to act like he's an obituary or whatever, but to reach like the level that he was at, he would have to go, and this is what I think he'll end up doing, is like the Christopher Hitchens route. Just be a charming, gay, attractive intellectual who wants to debate the issues. If he came back, and because he can debate quite well, so if he came back like that, where he's not just calling people, trans people names and not using any kind of slur, just
calling feminists like ugly fat cunts or like whatever.
Yeah, you can't say that. Yeah, you can't say it, and he doesn't need to say it. So if he came back as, look, I'm just a very young, attractive Christopher Hitchens, and I can hang with anybody in any kind of forum, then I think he could. So we'll see. The problem is, once you've been canceled, there's a lot of baggage that come with it. So you can't. It's weird. It's like you can't just reboot. You're like, okay, I'm sorry about these things, and come back. And here's how I'm going to come back. And then, of course, there is old habits die hard, because I'll watch his stuff with Gavin sometimes, and Milo doesn't seem to have any interest in coming back as a Christopher Hitchens kind of figure. That's fine. I'm not knocking him or giving him career advice. But that would be, at least for the next foreseeable future, few years, that's the only way he's going to make a really big comeback. And he could make a huge comeback like that.
Like, in a sense, like making nice, right? By like downplaying the like provocateur part of himself.
Well, you don't need to say that. I mean, yeah, you don't. That's the whole idea, is you don't actually need to do that anymore. That's the whole point of it, is you don't need to do it anymore. I don't know that you ever needed to do it in the first place, but he if you can just stand on, so that, how to put it? Okay. So Anthony, very smart guy. But if you're going to do it,
he's talking about Anthony Cumia, yeah.
Yeah. So if you're going to do a 3-hour show every day, you're going to have to shock it up, or just people are going to fall asleep. They're just, but that doesn't mean that if you want to be big, you have to be a shock. If you're giving one talk a week for 30 minutes or an hour, you don't have to come out like, throwing smoke bottles at everybody and stink bombs and making all those kinds of jokes. But if you're doing 20 hours of talking a week, yeah, you're going to have to get raunchy. You're going to have to get naughty. You're going to have to get vulgar. You're going to have to change up the pace. And so a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I'll just be a shock jock. But the reason they're shock jocks is because they have to fill that content void. So you don't have to be a shock jock. You can just be smart. You can just be intelligent.
Yeah.
You can make good point. Jordan Peterson proved that.
I love Jordan Peterson. He's like the dad I never had.
Yeah. You can just be smart and talk, and people are glad to listen to it. You don't have to make dick jokes, and you don't have to call trans people whatever. And you don't have to guard your language. You can say that you only believe there are 2 genders or whatever. You don't have to. Just be smart, talk, be intelligent. But people still want those kind of owning the libs kind of vibes too. And you give them the highlight reel, but you do it with respect and decency.
Yeah. Like Jordan Peterson isn't trying. I don't think he was ever trying to like get famous or shock anybody. He's just like a genuinely smart guy.
Well, he's trying to get famous.
He was?
Oh yeah. I mean, he's been trying to get famous on YouTube for years. And then,
really? Oh man. Yeah. All right.
No, that's why his brain broke, because
he okay? Right? I mean,
So he wanted to get famous, and then he got famous, and then he couldn't handle being famous. And that's the whole thing. Is like, I've lived in LA, Hollywood, known plenty of people who are familiar names. And if you're in the industry, you just see it coming. You got about 18 months before your brain's going to get smoked. But that's what happens. You come in the life cycle of a famous person. There are exceptions, but just think about how many people, even in comedy, like, wow, that person's like burning a fire. And then you're like, what happened to that person?
They'll get one really great credit, and then 6 months, exactly 6 months later, like, where the hell are they? A year later, and like, people will think getting something like Fallon or Colbert will like skyrocket their career, and then it's like, guess what? You're back at the deli, like everybody else working. Yeah.
That's what happened to Jordan. Is he wanted to get famous. He got like superstardom level of fame, and his brain melted down. That happens to a lot of people, and but if you've been in the industry, you're like, oh yeah, but I mean, I've seen 100 people come in, A-list talent, the it factor, and their brains melt down too. You just see it happen all the time. But
What causes somebody's brain to melt down? What, you can't handle like the attention? You can't handle like people shitting on you?
Oh yeah, I mean the adrenaline, the dopamine, the stress of what are they going to frame me for today? What kind of bullshit am I going to wake up to? Because I've lived in this world where it's like the New York Times is writing an article about me. Like, oh God, what are they going to say now? And for me, like I wrote a book, A Real Mindset. Like this is literally helping people get through this is like what I do. Like I wrote the book. So for me, I just lived my own book. But yeah, it's stressful, dude. It's like people. So how to say this? Like the media is just a nagging ex-wife. And what's it like to just be nagged relentlessly every day, right? Factor in that humans don't take criticism well in general, right? So let's just that's a great question. Why does your brain melt down? Okay, well, how would you feel if two of your friends were out at dinner and you could overhear them saying that like she's a cunt, a hater, she's doing all these things? How would you feel?
I'd be like, I only have 2 friends. It would be devastating.
Right. Yeah. So then imagine that there's 2 million people saying you're a Nazi, you hate women, you're a misogynist pig. Jordan Peterson is trying to bring back sex slavery and Sharia law because he did a thing on it, like enforced monogamy, which
really? How have I not seen that?
Yeah, but it doesn't mean what it sounds like. He was just saying, like, as a society, we should encourage monogamy. Like
it's better for families. It's better for kids. Yeah.
Yeah. Like if your husband's an alcoholic and he's beating you up, like, yeah, get out of there. But if you're just like, I don't feel the spark anymore. Well, honey, you just need to, work that out.
Guess what? Nobody does. Yeah.
Right. Instead of this like eat, pray, love culture. And right. It's like, oh, I'm bored. I need
to find myself at a yoga camp.
Yeah, exactly. Or if you're a man, like, oh, I need a younger woman. It's like, no, you don't. You're just going to be with your wife. That's just the way it's going to be. So, but
unless
that
you're
got
Epstein.
that got spun into Jordan Peterson's like encouraging sex slavery or something, right?
Oh God.
So that's your human brain can barely take 2 or 3 people not liking you, and now you have 2 or 3 or 20 or 30 million people not liking you, emailing you. You can't escape it, right? Unless you leave the internet, but you need the internet to like make a living. And then every time you're at some kind of event, you do an open mic, people are going to try to gotcha and checkmate you. It's incredibly psychologically taxing on people. The endorphins every day, the adrenaline every day, and it breaks your brain, especially too because a lot of people who get into this world they're seeking validation. So if your brain is already predisposed to, I want people to like me.
I'm like sponge attention. Yeah.
Yeah. I want attention. I want people to like me. Oh no, all these people hate me. You're already dealing with defective, maybe isn't the right word, but
you're like, it's attention, but it's bad. But there's so much attention, but it's bad. Yeah.
Right. You're like, I can't look away, but then what you're looking at is awful things all the time. And that gives you a form of PTSD. So most people, nobody talks about it, but like most people go through it. Some kind of PTSD from fame and infamy, everything else.
Really, nobody talks about that at all. I've never heard anybody refer to it as PTSD, but that absolutely makes so much sense. Like, and I, on a very, very small level, have been trolled online by like, just the whole city of Utica. I put this like silly like sketch out. It was like a shitty tour of Utica, and I just was talking about, people here are on meth. Like Utica is like New York's Detroit, like really out of my ass. And a local radio station picked it up, and then I had people like for 6 weeks, like again, like trolling me, like, oh, Utica's, you're ugly, you wouldn't last a day. It just because I said like in Utica I would be a 10, but in New York City I'm like a 4, and people are like, you're a 2 here, and then quietly people would like publicly shit on me, but then in my DMs be like, yeah, we really do have a meth problem in Utica, like quietly be on my side. And that was the first time you get sort of like publicly shamed by the internet. It's like, it hurts your feelings, but the more it happens, the more comfortable you get. But like, if that happens once a year, you can handle that. But I can't imagine just a constant barrage, of hate like that.
Yeah. Which again is, which again goes back to that's why your brain melts down. Is even if it's just something like the people at Utica don't like you, right? Like you don't even, that's the hard part about this is like, you don't really care. Like I did a comedy bit and that's your hometown and you're mad that I made fun of your hometown. Like, I don't care. It's never like we were going to hang out. It's never like you were going to buy a comedy DVD or whatever. And like, now you're not going to, but it doesn't matter that intellectually you can appreciate that you don't really care. Emotionally you do. And that's just little thing. The same thing happened. I did a podcast with a friend of mine and I was like, oh, you know, Mike, you're going to do this podcast with me. And eventually you're going to have somebody like posting to Facebook discussions that you're doing a podcast with me and that I'm like a bad person. He's like, oh yeah, but I don't care what people think about me. I was like, whew, where have I heard that before? I don't care what people think. What happens? 3 weeks later, he's like, I got this guy. He's bashing me on all these message boards I go on. And how do you handle this? And it becomes like an obsessive thing. So that's what I'm used to hearing people say, like, oh yeah, I don't care what people think. I'm not worried about it. It's like, oh, you think that because intellectually you shouldn't care. Intellectually, like, okay, so 2 million people don't like me. 20 million people love me. I'm doing fine. You know, I'm just a net social good. But your brain, again, that's why I call it your brain breaks. That soup of catecholamines and norepinephrine and everything else melts down your brain. And then you end up, you know, smoking a lot of weed. You know, people drink a lot. Why do you think so many people in entertainment, like, why do so many people drink a lot?
Everybody in LA is constantly smoking weed.
Right, because you have to. PTSD. That's how you're trying to use chemicals to offset these negative feelings that you kind of have. And then that's what happened with Jordan with pharmaceuticals, but it's the same principle. You're just like, oh my God, I'm my brain is melting down. I need to turn a few levers here and
help. Yeah. I know I read the first time that happened, it was like over some comedy joke thing. Like my friend Corinne Fisher was like, oh, you need to read this book. So you've been publicly shamed. And that made me feel a lot better because it's like a lot of times when someone is in the public eye being shamed, it's not so much. It's just like, oh, this person, everyone's looking at this person now. How can I, as like a nobody, elevate myself? Like, oh, we all can raise ourselves because we're shitting on this person that's like above us socially, you know, more attention, richer, whatever. So it was interesting to learn about like the psychology behind that and behind why like the masses will sort of gang up on somebody. It's like, yeah, they might actually dislike that person or they just want to like sort of posture and seem like they're, you know, better or on the right side of the issue.
Yeah. And your brain again. So, and also because people don't talk about it, like literally when I'm telling you people have PTSD, you're like, nobody talks about it, but it makes total sense. And it explains so much of how you see people like melting down. And you're like, oh, wow, but nobody ever talks about it because then if you talk about it, that becomes like a thing. Oh, Chrissy admits she has PTSD. She's crazy, you know, and you're like, wait, this is wrong. Like I'm trying to have like a productive thing. Like I've written about my mom having bipolar and a reporter, believe it or not, tweeted out that Mike Cernovich admitted that he was genetically defective. And
oh my God.
Yeah. And you're like, bro, I thought there's a stigma on mental illness. I'm talking about what it's like when my mom had bipolar, what that's like growing up. And then reporters who, you know, the woke patrol, he's at a very woke site, are like, oh, you're just genetically defective. And for me, I'm just so like.
To me, that sounds like a Nazi perspective. Like, oh, you're genetic. Yeah, there's something wrong in the bloodline. Your genetics are fucked up.
Yeah.
That's insane.
He said he was going to call my mom. So then I texted him and he realized because people were telling him like, dude, this is his own side was like, and to their credit, his own side was like, dude, that's like fucked up. And you're right but the idea is I've been through this stuff so many times. To me, it's just like, oh God, this fucking asshole, you know, what are they doing now? And you kind of chuckle or roll your eyes and maybe even insult them back a little bit. And that's it. You move on with your day. But to me, it's just another day at the office. Like, oh, people are going to call me shitty things today. Oh, I'm going to trend again on Twitter because everybody thinks I'm like a terrible person. Oh, no, the public shaming is coming again. But if you're not, and also I'm older, I'm 42. If you're not older, you're not psychologically robust. You have some emotional vulnerabilities and you haven't been through this ringer. You don't have a support network of people who have been there. And because like if a friend of mine are being publicly shamed, I would just like, come over, dude. We'll just drink wine and laugh about it. Smoke
Yeah,
cigars.
that's
Don't
great.
even
Because
read, right?
that's the best thing, because if you're alone by yourself, you'll just be on Reddit, or you'll be reading every comment on YouTube. Like I've
Yep.
been there. So
Yeah, name search. I don't name search myself on Twitter because
yeah.
it's all gonna be bad. So I
That
don't
opened
even know
up a
what.
whole different world. The day I learned about name search, I was like, oh wait, what? They're not tagging me on everything? What?
Right? No, no,
Yeah.
no. Yeah, the really nasty stuff they don't usually tag you on. So and that's why I'm kind of laughing about it, but it's actually not funny. It's just that my brain
No, it sucks.
has
Yeah.
been rewired in like a different way, which is I'm kind of an adrenaline junkie anyway. And some people want to climb rocks with the surface of a rock without a net.
Oh yeah, like the
Right.
bouldering. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like me. That's how my brain is registered. So when these people are going after me, I'm like, all right, let's, Shauna could even tell because my body heat like increases. So she's like, oh no. So she
Your
knows
heart
she's
starts
getting away from.
beating. Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm just radiating heat. Like if you walk behind me and you put your hand on my back, you'll literally feel like I have a sunburn or something. Like I just literally generate heat. So if your brain is like that, then you're like, let's do it. Oh, what's going on? Oh, so you guys want to publicly shame me now. Okay. And then you start like dunking on people. It used to be a lot of comics would try to dunk on me. But then I was like, I'll take this shit where you're not prepared for it to go. That quit.
So you would respond to a lot of them.
Oh yeah, it was fun to me. Now I have such a huge platform. I don't want to like cyberbully or whatever, so you got to play but I dunked on Ice-T the other day. He got mad. He's like,
You teabagged him.
Yeah. Like, I can't remember what he said, but I was like, you live in a gated community, Tracy. And then he's just went away because he called me a bitch.
You had to go close the gate. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. So Ice-T calls me a bitch on Twitter, but then I can clap back pretty good too. And then you realize, oh, okay, so they don't. But anyway, that's just a very long way of saying, if you have my psychological disposition, that uniquely suits you to this environment. But it maybe isn't a nice thing to have a conflict, adrenaline-seeking mind. Like my mind is broken in that regards, right? Where like, why do I want so much conflict? Am I afraid of my own vulnerabilities? Am I afraid of my own trauma? Am I afraid to uncover something about myself that might make me feel sad? And that's why I seek right?
Am I just a Scorpio?
I'm a Scorpio.
Yeah, me too.
There you go. So you do well if that's how your mind is. But if you have a more empathetic mind and you're a little bit more sensitive, it's going to hit you differently, and it's going to hit you not in a good way.
So you think you've been able to be protected from this sort of like whatever gets you to mind mush and PTSD? Because do you think it's more like your natural disposition, or kind of like your daily the messages you tell yourself and how you like keep yourself sane?
Yeah, it's all the above. It's one, the mindset work. It's two, that this is a blessing. I didn't become like an internet sensation overnight like Jordan Peterson did. That's different. It's one thing where I'm like, oh, so now I'm getting attacked by the Daily Beast.
You need a cute little accent. I feel like that's part of it.
Yeah, I'll come back. I'm gray in my hair, so I'll come back as the old guy at 50. And so for me, I was able to gradually kind of deal with new levels of conflict, whereas a lot of people, it's just like you're overnight and now it's everybody up your ass, not just one person. That's harder because you want to get the reps in early. You want to get that muscle memory in early, like, oh, so when this person says that, I'm going to say this. But with all like the fame that Jordan had and Milo and a few other people, your brain just can't handle that.
Yeah. Wow. It's almost like, I guess I'm happy I'm not verified on Twitter.
I mean, you got good stuff and you got a good kind of niche. I mean, you'll make and I mean, this isn't like damning with faint praise. So you'll make your way up the ranks in the food chain in like a healthy way, which is you'll get a little bit bigger and then you'll hit a little plateau and then you get a little bit bigger and you'll hit a plateau. And when you do it that way, that's actually the best way for longevity.
Unless I release a sex tape.
Well,
hey, Mike.
I don't know that works anymore.
No, because everybody has one, because everyone's got an OnlyFans and it's like, yeah. That's
You know,
true.
you got to charge for it. Actually, you can't just
It's
can't
true.
just release it. If you're not charging for it, you're actually getting played.
Oh yeah, for sure. I would charge like $2.99. I don't know. People
I don't know
ask me to
what rate
start to
is.
people start me to ask me to start at OnlyFans, and like I don't know. I probably will, but I'll just have like regular ass pictures on there.
Well, that's what I think Jacob Wall does. He just does like shirtless posts or something, and you know he's a guy. So yeah, you could just do like bikini shots or something, and people, you know, people. It doesn't even have to be that many people. If you only get 50 people, but they're paying $5 a month or something, $250 a month. That's nothing to sniff at.
Boom, that's the shoe budget. Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Mike, before we go, is there anything you want to plug? Where can people find you? What are you working on?
Yeah, fortunately, I'm not. Not wrapped, but Hoax is officially released. I did a movie on fake news. It did well.
Ooh,
2 weeks in a row, it's one of the top 10 best-selling independent films in the country, which
wow.
blew me away. Yeah, and yeah, so people can go watch Hoax the movie at HOAXEDMOVIE.com. You can find it at Vudu, Walmart, Amazon Bandit. That's maybe a conversation for a different day. But it's all over. It's all over otherwise, pretty much everywhere but Amazon. And that's probably the best thing, if you've never heard about me, to watch.
Okay, perfect. Mike, thank you so much for coming on, and it was great chatting with you. And yeah, I will see you around. I guess I'll see you
See you on
next
the
time.
interwebs.
See you on the interwebs. Bye.
Bye-bye.